The views and opinions expressed by the guests, callers, and hosts on this and all Rense Radio Network programs do not necessarily reflect or agree with those of the network, its commercial sponsors, its radio station affiliates, or Internet broadcast platforms. In these controversial times, we believe the First Amendment and freedom of the press are absolutely essential to the survival of our nation. Thank you. And now, enjoy the program.
Okay, I imagine some of you are probably feeling like I am. I'm getting rather tired of the bin Laden stories, but more than that, I'm getting tired of the Obama stories. I mean, this guy is I'm not sure what's going on. We've got Webster Tarpley standing by to give us his view on this, but it is clearly a garbled, as he is written in his article, which is up right near the very top of Rense.com headlines right now. It's called CIA's Garbled Bin Laden Narrative, a prelude to false flag terror campaign targeting Pakistan, a general war threatens. I'll vote for that. This is one of those stories, again, just like the birth certificate, where they can't keep their story straight. They've reversed themselves at least twice on this, and details keep changing. It's all pretty disgusting, and I think many of you probably feel that way. I'm going to run stories tonight and tomorrow on it, then probably pull the plug. Everybody's got an opinion, and many of the opinions I run are certainly worth reading and considering, and that's for you folks to make up your own mind. Webster, welcome back.
Jeff, thank you. Let me say, first of all, I have no interest in rehashing the minutia of this idiotic narrative. I think that that is completely fabricated. It's all unsubstantiated. The one common denominator of the, alleged life and alleged death of the pseudo bin Laden, in quotes, I don't know how far I can distance myself from this idiotic story, is that nothing was ever proven. It's all unsubstantiated from 9/11 down to the present day.
Yeah.
It's all completely invented, and it makes no sense to go into this and try to debate the details. Indeed, that's what they'd like you to do, because
they love
then you debate the minutia and you accept the big picture, and then, of course, you've become a complete cretin, which is what's going on. It is a garbled story. It changes, I think, by design. That's a PSYOPs technique. If you need an emergency synthesis of what happened, you might as well take something like this, that the body of the biological bin Laden died of kidney failure in 2001, 2002, or he was eliminated, liquidated to silence him. He of course, had some bin Laden, at least one bin Laden, one of the several bin Ladens, had denied any role in 9/11. We have in my book, 9/11 Synthetic Terror Made in USA, the Pakistani newspaper Ummat, which contains a lengthy denial by bin Laden, or alleged bin Laden. So the body frozen and delivered, right? You can think of Operation Canned Meat, the Zender Gleiwitz, right? Remember this? Hitler wants to attack Poland.
Oh, yeah.
So he goes to this Gleiwitz radio station. He brings in some convicts, dresses them up in Polish uniforms, shoots them, and leaves them lying around, and he says this proves that Poland attacked. It's not so different. A dead body presumably flown in. Some people may be killed on the scene. Remember that bin Laden, I think, dead for a long time, and what we've seen is a parade of doubles, and not very good ones at that.
Poor doubles, obvious doubles.
It seemed like every unemployed actor in the Middle East who looked anything like bin Laden had a chance to give it a try. We've had the fat bin Laden, the thin one. We've had the gaunt, the stout, the jovial, the angry, now this part is over. That double operation, though, it produced these audio tapes. The re-election of George Bush the younger, right, in October 2004. Very well timed bin Laden tape that excited public opinion. The really strange one I would point you to is the August 2007 one, right before the Rogue B-52, when you were on the brink of war, as we are now, with Cheney the Cheney network, let's say, the network that ran Cheney, trying to send that B-52 into the Middle East. We had a bin Laden who was much different than any of the others, with a very dark beard. He looked more like Groucho Marx than like the previous bin Ladens. He's a little bit like El Cid, if you know El Cid, right? See that movie with Charlton Heston, the great Spanish hero of the late Middle Ages or early modern times, who fights his last battle after he's already dead, propped
him up in his horse, yeah.
So in this case, it's similar.
By the way, let me say just two quick things. I'm going to jump back out. One, don't be surprised if they parade some DNA evidence in the next few days.
Based on this dead body.
That's right. And they easily could have gone in there and killed his eldest son, his brother who lived there. There was no kidney dialysis machine in there, folks. You've seen the alleged pictures of the interior.
We think we know. We don't know. All we know,
nothing.
What we know. Okay. We know that the target is Pakistan. That we amply know, because that's how all the coverage is going. So the idea of this is to demonize Pakistan and to prepare for a false flag terror operation of the well-known type, where a drill goes live, is flipped live, an exercise is taken into the realm of the real world, and we even have various CIA spokespersons telling us that the source of the next false flag, this will be billed as a revenge attack by Al-Qaeda against the United States or NATO for having killed their great hero. But we're told by the CIA already that it may say Al-Qaeda, but it's really going to be the Pakistani Inter-Service Intelligence
ISI again,
agency.
Folks. Yeah.
So we even know what's coming. And let me say at the very beginning, people who got into the habit of doing research on drills and exercises back in 2006, 2007, would be very well advised, and it would be extremely welcome if they came forward with reports, right? If you know of a drill that involves a Pakistani dirty bomb going off, this would really be the time to call that to everybody's attention. In terms of the model for what they're doing, look at this Ray Davis affair. This character, he was supposedly a diplomat. He was no diplomat. He was a goon. That he might have been working
CIA
for
goon.
Blackwater, CIA.
Blackwater could have been a CIA sub-chief or something.
All right, and his story was that he was in league with terrorists, according to various Pakistani publications. He was in cahoots with various terrorist forces on the ground, and the implication was that a radiological dirty bomb was in preparation. So the U.S. could say to the Pakistanis, aha, we knew it, your nukes are not safe, we will confiscate them. This is probably going to lead then to a shooting war, and I think that's what people have to bear in mind, that the Chinese Foreign Ministry has put out a very strong statement yesterday morning saying that they support Pakistan against these wild accusations coming from the United States. Naturally, people in Pakistan knew that this operation was going on in this compound, but the U.S. knew it too. But what the Chinese say is that they're supporting Pakistan, just in terms of what that compound was doing, not just the audio tapes, but with doubles, right? They probably had, a shift system of 2 or 3 doubles so they could work around the clock. This character, this figure of bin Laden, I believe, would have been used to try to influence and steer patsy groups across the world. People who think that they're in Al-Qaeda are likely to be what? Fanatics, psychotics, misfits, mercenaries, double agents, all kinds of crazy human detritus coming out of these societies.
Mm-hmm.
But if some group calls in and says, we're a group of terrorists here in Chinese Turkmenistan, what can we do? Well, they'll tell you, go to Beijing and attack this and this official. Or if you're in Chechnya, what should you do? Well, you should go to Moscow and you should get after Putin or somebody there, and so on down the line. You can just imagine. And that this would be done by a double, so that the patsy who's calling in, so to speak, is actually believes that he's being given, marching orders directly from bin Laden. So the raid had to be unilateral, right? It was exactly as Obama promised, right? In that speech in the stadium, he said, I'm going to go get bin Laden in the cave where he lives. Well, the cave, of course, is a meme that has fallen by the wayside, but he's done it. And you'll remember, Bush said no, Hillary said no, even McCain said no, it's too aggressive. We should work with Musharraf at that time. But they had to have this as an affront, because the idea is, of course, the destruction of Pakistan is the immediate goal.
How's that going to be? How is that allegedly, in the minds of those who want this to happen, going to be accomplished?
Well, do we have time, or is it break
I would take a break, but
okay.
Think about it. I mean, we don't have boots on the ground to do it. We'd have to do it, obviously.
I'll tell you how. It's very easy.
Yeah, all right. Hang on. We'd certainly like to. Certain interests would like
they
to
would.
get hold of the Pakistan nuclear arsenal too. Back in a minute. Back with you and Webster Tarpley. Okay, Webster, go ahead. How are we going to see the demise of Pakistan in a military sense?
By making peace in Afghanistan, and you can see this. It's very, very obvious. We now have an attempt by Hillary Clinton to make peace with the Taliban. Make peace. Whenever you hear that from these people, watch out. This already started a couple of months ago. In February of this year, Hillary Clinton made a policy shift, a big change. And this was to drop all preconditions for U.S. talks with the Taliban. It used to be that the U.S. would say to the Taliban, we won't talk to you unless and until you renounce the use of force and violence, unless and until you break from Al-Qaeda and repudiate them and bin Laden, and until you accept the Afghan constitution. Now, that was all jettisoned back in February. So what you're hearing now from Hillary and these people in the National Security Council is Samantha Power, I'm sure, and Cass Sunstein. It's time to make peace with Afghanistan. Well, what does that allow you to do? You get the Taliban on your side. It's typical Brzezinski.
You
play
buy
the
them
Taliban
off.
against Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, the Taliban are the main cross-border ethnicity, right? The Pashtuns. The Talibans are the Pashtuns. They're half, or by now less than half on the Afghan side, more of them on the Pakistan side, right? So the idea is basically, join us. You're no longer bound by the laws of hospitality, because Mullah Omar gave asylum to bin Laden, not to all of his gang, right? This is a sort of a cosmetic detail. But the idea is now play the Pashtuns against the Sinds and the Punjabis. Those are the two dominant ones in Islamabad, and get the Baluchistan going again under that Rigi organization.
Does this tie into a war on Iran?
It does, but directly it's a war against Pakistan, and I think we should be clear about how this scenario goes. Remember, Rigi has been executed by the Iranians. The Rigi, the leader of the Baluchistan terror group,
right,
Jundullah, he was captured by the Iranians with the help of Pakistan. This was already a very unfriendly act by the Pakistanis towards the U.S. sort of terror apparatus. So you push the Pashtuns into this war situation, a civil war against the Punjabis and the Sinds. Remember, the goal is the breaking up of Pakistan into those four key parts: Punjabis, Sinds, Baluchis, and Pashtuns. And the Pashtuns are the Taliban, and that's what the U.S. is trying to do.
So everything gets balkanized, everything from Libya to Pakistan and all points in between. That's the game.
Again, this is their idiotic plan. I don't think this works at all. But remember also that we have the CIA plan. If you remember the long debate with Obama until the West Point speech, the CIA plan said far fewer troops. Let's have Predator drones and special forces take over Afghanistan. All you need to do is intervene and kill people at key points. You don't need to have 100,000 troops there. Those troops then become available for use, well, obviously across the border in Pakistan. And you can see the hullabaloo around the SEAL Team 6, this myth-drenched organization, seems to give the idea, what you need is not those big army battalions on the ground. They're no good. You need these people with Predator drones and helicopters. You're also told that they used stealth helicopters now for the first time, but that those awful Pakistanis have taken the wreckage of the stealth helicopter. The reason it had to be blown up was that it was stealth, but still those Pakistanis have shipped those helicopters to Beijing because that's what they work with. We also had a couple of days ago at the end of last week that Pakistan had told Karzai of Afghanistan, dump the U.S., break with the U.S., and go with Beijing. So I think that's all pretty...
That was a very costly loss that you just alluded to, the loss of a stealth helicopter, by the way. The Chinese are all over it probably right now.
Yes, but again, who knows whether I don't know whether any of this is true. What I do know is that all the news reports are telling you it's Hate Pakistan Week. And one of the shocking things about this, which deserves comment later on, the former peaceniks, the former left liberals in large numbers, the Rachel Maddows, the MSNBCs, the Ed Schultz, the Cenk Uyghurs there, the Jeremy Scahills, the Juan Coles, all of these people who were anti-war in the Iraq situation are now fire-eating warmongers. They've become warmongers for Obama, and it's shocking. So the entire left liberal foundation-funded peacenik universe has shown what it's really made of.
Does this reinvigorate the utterly fake war on terror?
I think we just have to look at it sort of empirically. What do you see? There's a murder spree from Saturday afternoon until Sunday night. My strategic picture was all-out alert for false flag operation to be blamed on Libya, and that one still goes. That's still up there, right after the attempt to kill Gaddafi and ultimately murder his son and a 3-year-old child, a 2-year-old child, and I think a 4-month-old child. Grandchildren of Gaddafi.
That's the third time they tried to kill him. They killed his daughter and
more. And remember the Shaler operation in the mid-90s.
That's right.
But look, I once saw this room in the Pentagon where the Joint Chiefs of Staff operate, and they had this display. And the display was a display of strategic parameters that they kept up to date. And one of the parameters in the display was, has there been an assassination of a head of state or head of government within the last 72 hours? Has there been an attempted assassination? Have there been other high-profile assassinations around the world? And if there has been one, that brings you up towards higher levels of alert, at least in terms of your intelligence posture. And I think that's where we are right now. We're in the middle of a murder spree, and I don't think anybody is immune to this. Maybe the other historical parallel that I would like to cite to sort of put a framework around where we are. Sarajevo, on June 22nd, 1914.
1914, yeah. Hold on, Webster. Let's get onto that in just a couple of minutes and start it fresh. This is important history, and younger people actually know so little about history, even recent history, let alone current history. Apparently the search engines were receiving a lot of hits, a lot of traffic with the question, who is Osama bin Laden? Well, at least the young people were asking. Let's give them that much. All right. Hold on. Back in a minute. And we are back with Webster Tarpley, who is with us the first Tuesday, Wednesday of each month, first hour, and that is tonight already. Okay, go ahead.
Sarajevo. Was this Sarajevo? I guess we'll find out soon enough. But this was August 22nd, 1914, the assassination of the Austrian Archduke in Sarajevo, at that time part of, essentially under the Austrian Empire, administered by them. This was done by Serb fanatics that were egged on by British and pro-British Freemasonic lodges in the Balkans. And this is what led to World War I, right? The greatest catastrophe of the 20th century. World War II was bigger, of course, but it grew out of World War I directly, as did Nazism, communism, and a whole series of other things, the World Depression. But the idea was Sarajevo occurred. This top heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary was assassinated. But then the war didn't break out for about 5 or 6 weeks. And the interesting thing is to look at the psychology of the European elites and indeed of the European privileged classes more generally, to see what they thought was going on. And a lot of them thought that the war danger had passed and that actually the tensions between England and Germany had gone down to a very notable level. And I think we may be living now, maybe I can wrap up at the end with a little literary example of what I'm talking about, but we're in a kind of a never land, a dream trance of public opinion, which has greeted this thing as some kind of wonderful event, and now there's going to be an era of good feelings. And at the same time, we're drifting towards this conflagration. If the U.S. insists on meddling inside Pakistan, there may be a response from China, and that may not be located in Pakistan at all. It may be located all sorts of different places. It can occur. India is right in the middle of this, right? And I don't know what the mentality of the Indian elites are now, but if something happens between the United States on the one side and Pakistan, China on the other, India is almost certainly going to come in there as cannon fodder for the U.S., or at least that would be the danger. If China is involved against India, then I think Russia also has to somehow respond. In other words, this is a general Eurasian conflagration, but it is a world war, and nobody will get out of this. And this will not be a one-way street, right? Americans have the idea that war is something you do to somebody else. You're now getting to the orders of magnitude of power of states that actually can defend themselves, starting with Pakistan, of course, because they have hundreds of nuclear weapons. They just tested a 350-kilometer cruise missile. So there is this possibility. The other thing with Pakistan, very simple. The main supply line, as we've pointed out many times over the years, the main supply line of the invading forces in Afghanistan goes all the way through Pakistan, from Karachi port to the Khyber Pass. It's almost 1,000 miles. It is simply indefensible. You can't have your supply line going through the heart of the enemy territory. And of course, I would say that the U.S. has absolutely no quarrel with Pakistan. They're simply trying to defend their national existence. The U.S. should get out of Afghanistan and out of this region.
11 years. How are they going to do this gracefully? Well, we're going to sit down with the Taliban and iron out an agreement. 11 years.
They do want peace with the Taliban, but that's just a prelude to turning the Taliban around.
Well, the funny thing is they had peace with the Taliban. They had it. Everything was fine until the Taliban didn't want to go along with the extortion.
The goal was never the global war on terror. It had nothing to do with the Taliban
Absolutely.
per se. Everything to do with breaking up Pakistan so it can't become this energy corridor, the famous pipeline corridor between Iran on the one side and China on the other. And that, of course, would be so attractive that India would be interested, and that would begin to pull India away from the U.S. and into the sphere of what you could call normal, peaceful development, international economic cooperation, all the things that used to be considered normal and really a threat to nobody, it shouldn't be, are now considered casus belli, right, a reason for war by the United States.
How does the BRIC organization then factor into this? Brazil, Russia, India, China.
BRIC is all very well when it comes to their economic stance, but they're not coherent strategically, precisely because what's with India in the middle of all this? There is, of course, in the background a dollar crisis going on. This is also kind of like 1914. There were some pretty severe economic shocks during the immediate run-up to World War I. Here, I got the Washington Post of today. They want to tell you the dollar is at risk, and one of the biggest risks is that the value of the dollar could decline in ways that are abrupt and disruptive. So they're telling you between the lines that the dollar collapse may not be far away. So the typical answer to that is, if you can't answer in terms of monetary reform or production, which these crackpot U.S. elites, this idiotic ruling class that we have, they don't want to do that. They want to play what they think is their strong suit, which is this military stuff. Now, just to round this out, the build-up on Pakistan, of course, has been going on for a while. I mean, you could even say the original 9/11 myth was built in with Saudi Arabia on the one side and Pakistan being the target, right? Saudi Arabia, because it was claimed that there were all these Saudi hijackers, completely invented, completely manufactured story, never any proof.
Right.
And Pakistan, of course, were the bad guys because some Pakistani gave a big check to some guy that morning or whatever it was.
Well, it was a bag man, and he delivered a big bunch of cash.
Yeah, but
supposedly.
of course, this is the ISI working with the U.S. and doing things that the U.S.
But here's
wanted.
the question. Here's the question. Is China going to sit idly by and see its conduit dismembered?
No, that's what I'm trying to say. And that's what this statement from the Chinese Foreign Ministry of yesterday morning was. It basically says, you mess with Islamabad, you're picking a fight with us, so back off.
Well, one can only hope.
Yeah, well, we'll soon find out. And, you know, the situation, we've seen Putin becoming more and more vehement about Libya.
He's not happy with Medvedev at all, from what I can understand.
No, and of course with good reason. And I think it's quite obvious that in terms of the mentality and perspectives of the average Russian, Putin represents these, and Medvedev, I think, represents a very small layer of globalist.
I suspect a connection to the Western elite that's beginning to surface.
Of course, and also through various cultural factors. But just to stick with this war question, since I think this overrides it. I think the Russian situation will be clarified. The Najibullah Zazi out in Queens, Flushing, in the summer of 2009. This guy was supposed to be preparing to blow up, I don't know what, his connections to Pakistan. The Times Square bomber of January 2010, I believe, all going to Pakistan, and Pakistan was bashed mercilessly at that time. Just more recently, we had Hillary Clinton going over there, I guess, last spring, and complaining that you know where bin Laden is, but you're not willing to tell us. What hypocrisy! Just in the last couple of months.
All Hillary had to do was watch the 2002 CBS News report that was very well done, anchored by Dan Rather.
Right.
They went to Pakistan and everywhere else. I ran the story. Nobody remembers that. That was a very good piece.
That's quite right. And in terms of older stories, Donald Rumsfeld said in 2001 November on television, we want him dead, not alive. And of course, they don't want him alive because that would be very embarrassing. The stories he might tell.
Poor Tim. Poor Tim.
Look, I was working in Beirut in the theater, and they told me I could make money here.
Poor Tim Osman, rest in peace, long ago.
Now, let me try to run through a few things in the last
segment. Let's skip the break and let Webster make his point.
All right,
here.
Let me just rattle on now, because otherwise I wanted to get the whole picture. So, look, we had this harsh statement a little while ago. The U.S. government terror report saying very harshly was in the headline that Pakistan is not being honest. We then had Mullen, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, going over to Islamabad and actually giving interviews to the paper saying, you guys are treacherous because you work with the Haqqani network. We had the huge thing over this Ray Davis because the Pakistanis knew exactly or said that this was a terror controller who was getting ready for a radiological dirty bomb, according to various things you could get in the Pakistani media. And now, of course, we find that he was living in Abbottabad the entire time. Now, the question is, therefore, why? Why are they doing this? What's the urgency of doing it now? Well, think of that one little tidbit we had of the Pakistani government urging Karzai in Afghanistan, kick the U.S. out and make your deal with China. The larger picture, of course, as I think we discussed already last week, the trip of Prince Bandar of